The rain was pouring heavily the night David died in a brutal head-on car collision. His body was completely crushed, leaving his young wife Elena absolutely shattered. In the weeks following the funeral, Elena completely isolated herself inside their large secluded country house. She stopped answering phone calls, refused to open the curtains, and wouldn't let anyone inside. Rumors began to spread among the locals that something was deeply wrong with the widow. Worried for her sanity, David's elderly parents, Thomas and Martha, along with his younger sister Chloe, decided to drive down to the house to check on her. The moment they stepped out of their car, a heavy, unsettling silence hung over the property. The air felt unusually cold for July. When Thomas knocked on the heavy wooden door, it slowly creaked open on its own. The inside of the house was pitched in complete darkness, smelling heavily of damp earth and rot. "Elena?" Chloe called out, her voice trembling in the dark hallway. No one answered. Instead, a suffocating, heavy atmospheric pressure settled over them, making it hard to take a full breath. It felt as though the house itself was rejecting their presence. Suddenly, they heard a faint, rhythmic whispering coming from the master bedroom upstairs. Moving quietly up the creaking stairs, the family approached the cracked bedroom door. Thomas peeked inside, and the sight made his blood run cold. Elena was sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring intently at the empty, unmade bed. She was emaciated, her skin pale, and her eyes wide and bloodshot. She was laughing and whispering to the empty space, saying, "Yes, my love, I know they are here. I will make them leave." But she wasn't alone. Hovering directly over the empty bed was a massive, shifting mass of pitch-black smoke. It didn't have a human shape, but within the darkness, two glowing, hollow white eyes stared back at Elena. It was a grief eater, an ancient demonic entity that infests places of extreme sorrow, feeding on human misery until nothing is left but madness and death. The monster had attached itself to Elena's intense grief, manipulating her mind, pretending to be her dead husband. Before Thomas could shout, the entity's hollow eyes snapped toward the doorway, locking onto the family. A sudden, violent gust of freezing wind slammed the bedroom door shut behind them, locking them inside. The bright light of their flashlights instantly flickered and died. The temperature plummeted below freezing, and the supernatural pressure in the room became so immense that Martha's nose began to bleed. They were completely paralyzed by terror, unable to move a single muscle. From the darkness, the shifting shadow monster expanded, crawling along the ceiling like a massive spider. It dropped down directly behind Elena, wrapping its freezing smoke like tentacles around her neck. Elena didn't scream. Instead, her jaw dropped open impossibly wide, and her eyes rolled into the back of her head. The entity began to speak through Elena, but the voice that came out was a distorted, demonic fusion of Elena's and David's voices. "You brought your pity into my home," the creature hissed, its voice vibrating through the floorboards. "But your grief will taste so much sweeter." Suddenly, the shadow extended a massive tentacle of pure darkness, wrapping it around Thomas's throat. It lifted the old man into the air, snapping his neck with a sickening crack. Martha screamed in agony, but before she could run, the darkness engulfed her entirely, suffocating her until her heart stopped. Chloe, gripped by a sudden surge of adrenaline, managed to break through the paralysis. She threw herself against the locked bedroom window, smashing through the glass and tumbling out onto the muddy ground below. Bleeding and terrified, she looked back up at the second-floor window. In the dim moonlight, she saw Elena standing at the broken window, smiling a wide, unnatural, ear-to-ear grin. Standing right behind her, the towering shadow monster raised a hand, waving goodbye to Chloe. The next morning, the police searched the house. They found the bodies of Thomas and Martha, their faces frozen in expressions of absolute terror. But Elena and the entity were gone. To this day, the house remains abandoned, but paranormal investigators claim that if you enter that bedroom at exactly 3:00 am, the heavy pressure returns, and you can hear the faint, terrifying laughter of the creature that still waits for its next meal. Marcus and Julianne had everything wealth could buy, a massive, historic estate isolated deep within the foggy woods of New England. Luxury sports cars and an endless stream of financial success. To the outside world, They were the perfect, envy-inducing couple. But it all came to a sudden, horrifying halt one stormy winter night when Marcus suffered a fatal, unexplainable heart attack in the middle of the night. His corpse was found frozen on the master bedroom floor in a position of absolute terror, his fingers tightly gripping a strange ancient iron key covered in cryptic, hand-carved runes. Before taking his final agonizing breath, Marcus had forced the cold metal key into Julianne's trembling hand, staring at her with bloodshot eyes, and whispered a chilling warning that would haunt her forever: never lose it. No matter what you hear, no matter who calls your name, if they come for it, do not open the door. Following the gloomy funeral, Marcus's grieving mother Evelyn and his younger brother Leo moved into the grand mansion to support the shattered widow. The atmosphere inside the house was instantly suffocating. From the moment they stepped through the heavy oak doors, an oppressive, unnatural atmospheric pressure seemed to weigh down on everyone's shoulders. It wasn't just the weight of grief, it felt like a physical presence, making it difficult to take a full breath, as if the very air inside the estate was turning into liquid. The hallways were plagued by sudden, freezing drafts, and the grand-grandfather clock in the main hall began to glitch, its pendulum swinging erratically before completely stopping at exactly 3 a.m. every single day. The real nightmare began on their third night together. The storm outside was howling, throwing heavy rain and branches against the massive glass windows. At exactly 3 a.m., the temperature inside the mansion plummeted to sub-zero levels within seconds. Thick, white frost rapidly crawled across the inside of the windows, and everyone's breath turned into dense clouds of fog. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the dark, cavernous hallway, the unmistakable, terrifying sound of heavy iron chains dragging slowly across the polished hardwood floors. Clink, clink, clink. It was accompanied by the sound of dragging, heavy footsteps. Then, 3 slow, deafening knocks rattled the massive front door. The sound was so powerful that it vibrated through the walls, causing the framed family portraits to shatter on the floor. Leo, trying to be brave, rushed out into the hallway to see who could possibly be outside in such a horrific storm. But the moment his feet hit the top of the stairs, the supernatural pressure in the air became immense. A sudden, unseen force slammed him down to his knees. The atmospheric weight was crushing his chest, making it impossible to scream. Within seconds, the extreme pressure caused Leo's nose and ears to bleed violently. He was completely paralyzed, trapped in his own body, unable to move a single muscle. From the keyhole of the front door, a thick, pitch-black liquid began to ooze out. It defied gravity, crawling up the walls and across the ceiling like a living web of darkness, blotting out the remaining light. Julianne stood at the end of the corridor, clutching the ancient iron key so hard that its sharp runes cut deep into her palm, drawing blood. In that terrifying moment of absolute clarity, she finally realized the awful, hidden truth behind Marcus's sudden fortune. Her husband hadn't earned his millions through smart investments or hard work. He had made a forbidden, dark occult pact with an ancient entity for wealth and power. The luxury, the mansion, and the success were just a loan. And now that Marcus was dead, the demonic entity had come to collect the remaining balance, the souls of everyone who shared his blood and lived under his roof. With a final explosive crash, the heavy oak front door didn't just open, it violently shattered inward, exploding into 1,000 splinters. A towering entity, standing over 8 feet tall, stepped out of the howling storm and into the hallway. It was a creature made of pure shifting darkness, held together by jagged, exposed human bones that clicked with every movement. Its eyes were 2 burning red embers glowing brightly in the pitch-black void of its face. When it spoke, its distorted, multi-layered voice shook the very foundations of the estate, vibrating inside their skulls. The debt is overdue. The bloodline must pay, it roared, a sound like grinding metal and dying screams. Leo tried to crawl away, but a tentacle of pure shadow erupted from the entity's chest, wrapping tightly around his throat. It lifted the young man high into the air, slowly draining the life force straight out of his body until his skin turned a sickening ash gray and his eyes rolled back. Evelyn rushed out of her room, screaming in agony at the sight of her dying son, but before she could take another step, the freezing, supernatural pressure crushed her chest, stopping her heart instantly. She collapsed onto the cold floor, lifeless. Julianne stood alone at the top of the stairs, frozen in pure horror as the towering entity slowly turned its burning red eyes toward her. It began to glide up the staircase, its skeletal hand extended, waiting for the iron key that Marcus had traded his soul for. The next morning, the local police investigated the mansion after neighbors reported hearing blood-curdling screams echoing through the woods at exactly 3 Luck M. When they breached the house, the storm had passed, but the mansion was dead silent and completely empty. There were no signs of Julianne, Leo, or Evelyn. Their bodies were never found. The only things left behind in the ruined hallway were a single iron key melted completely into the hardwood floor, and the words paid in full scorched deep and black into the wall above it. The sudden death of 22-year-old Ethan sent shockwaves through his family. He was found dead in his bedroom on a quiet Tuesday morning, his body completely rigid, his eyes wide open, and a look of pure, unadulterated horror frozen on his pale face. The coroners could find no medical explanation for his passing. His heart had simply stopped out of sheer terror. 2 days later, a gloomy, rain-slicked funeral was held at an old historic chapel on the outskirts of town. The atmosphere inside was suffocatingly heavy. Ethan's sister Lily, overwhelmed by grief and wanting to preserve the final memory of her brother for their distant relatives, pulled out her phone to record a brief video of the service. She panned the camera across the weeping crowd, the dim candlelight, and finally rested the lens on the polished wooden casket surrounded by white roses. It wasn't until late that night, inside their silent family home, that Lily decided to review the footage. Her parents, Sarah and Robert, had already gone to bed, exhausted from crying. Sitting alone in her dark bedroom, Lily pressed play. The video started normally, but as the camera focused on Ethan's casket, the digital feed began to glitch violently, filled with heavy audio static and visual distortion. Lily frowned, zooming in on the screen. Her breath hitched. Sitting directly on top of the closed casket was something that hadn't been there in real life. It was a tall, skeletal silhouette, made of pure, shifting darkness. Its long, needle-like fingers clawed at the wood of the coffin, and its head was turned directly toward Lily's camera. 2 piercing, hollow, glowing yellow eyes stared straight through the lens, looking directly into Lily's soul. Terrified, Lily dropped her phone. At that exact moment, the grandfather clock downstairs struck 3:00 am. Instantly, the temperature in Lily's bedroom plummeted to sub-zero levels. Her breath turned into thick, white clouds of fog. A heavy, supernatural atmospheric pressure settled over the house, so intense that it made her ears pop and her chest feel as though a concrete block had been placed upon it. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoed from her parents' bedroom down the hall. Lily tried to spring out of bed, but an invisible force slammed her back down. She was trapped in a state of total agonizing sleep paralysis. She couldn't move her arms, her legs, or even cry out for help. Her eyes darted wildly toward the open bedroom door. Slowly, the sound of wet, heavy footsteps approached from the hallway. Thud. 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 Through the doorway, the towering shadow entity from the video glided into her room. The atmospheric pressure intensified to a breaking point, causing Lily's nose to bleed, the dark red drops staining her bedsheets. The creature extended its impossibly long shadow-like arms, dragging the lifeless bodies of her mother and father behind it across the floor. Their faces were twisted into the exact same expression of absolute terror that Ethan had when he died. The entity let go of her parents and floated closer to Lily's bed, hovering directly over her paralyzed body. The stench of rotting flesh and damp earth filled the room. The monster bent down, its glowing yellow eyes inches away from Lily's face. It opened its jagged mouth, and a distorted, multi-layered voice echoed inside her mind. "You captured my harvest on film. Now you must join the collection." The next afternoon, concerned neighbors called the police after noticing the family's front door swinging open in the wind. When investigators searched the house, they found the master bedroom completely untouched, but Lily's room was a scene of horror. The bodies of Sarah and Robert were found sitting upright in chairs, frozen in terror. Lily was found lying on her bed, lifeless, with that same horrifying wide-eyed stare. The police recovered Lily's phone from the floor. The video file of the funeral was completely corrupted and unplayable, but when the forensic team analyzed the device, they found a single new photo saved in the gallery, taken automatically at exactly 3:03 am. It was a selfie of Lily lying paralyzed in bed, and standing directly behind her in the shadows was the towering entity, its long fingers wrapped around her throat, waving at the camera.